The next session is both timely and rich in possibility. Titled Creativity and Culture, Perspectives from Diverse Markets. The upcoming discussion will focus on how creativity and culture intersect, evolve, and inform each other across different geographies, industries, and communities. Steering the discussion will be Jasrita Dhir, Vice President for Brand and Communication at Ashoka University, a leading Indian educational institution based out of the National Capital Region. The speakers in the session include Alex Malouf, Senior Director of Public Relations and Media at a leading group based in Saudi Arabia. He was previously with Schneider and Procter & Gamble in the Middle East. Joining them is also Shruti Bose, Head of Global Campaigns at Roche. She's come in from Switzerland to be with us here. Panelists, let's dive right in.
Okay. All three of us are acutely aware of who stands between you and lunch, right? Between you nourishing your grumbling belly. So I don't know about enriching, but we'll try to make it fun and conversational. That's what we plan to do. When you're born in a country which is the size of a continent, the interplay of culture and communication is at every step. You consume it every day. Through teenage and adulthood, a lot of us here have resonated with the Amul girl. She's been with us for all our elations and all our heartbreaks. Yeah. For 2 decades or more, we have had somebody tell us, "Daag achhe hain," which tells you that rolling your sleeves up and getting your hands dirty is good, because getting stained from doing good deeds is good. Yeah? And so on and forth. I can go on and on about it. But what I want to talk about today here is that organizations and countries have done a good job so far of this interplay of culture and communications. Look at government's Incredible India campaign. People of all colors and hues are sitting here, and that's thanks to the government of India's Incredible India campaign, right? My panel members here come from 2 very different worlds that they inhabit. There is the whole affluence, kinship, respect that comes from the Middle East that you represent, Alex. And there's also the individualism, neutrality, precision of the West that you represent, right? Well, the irony of the colors and the worlds that they come from is not lost on me. I think it's not lost on you, but who will get along with it? And they're all converging in a city of a global south, Mumbai, which is known for its entrepreneurial spirit, which is known for its jugaad, which is known for the spirit of Mumbai, equal parts celebrated, equal parts derided, right? So let's delve into your worlds that you represent, Alex and Shruti. I'll start with you, Alex. We live in a world of contrasting forces. There's social media, there's proliferation of screens, there's increasing migration, and that means there's blurring of borders. But at the same time, we see that the countries are becoming more insular and more inwardly focused, right? So from your vantage point, is creativity universal? Or should we think about creativity in more inclusive and localized settings?
Let me ask the audience a question, okay?
Good way to wake them up.
How many of you are creative? Put your hands up. If you think you're creative, put your hands up. Okay, not a bad turnout, 2/3. I'd expect more, We are an industry where we're given a sentence and we're expected to come up with an essay, which you can publish in any outlet. But, my mum used to say to me that common sense isn't common. And in many ways, I'd say the same about creativity. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we all work with people who probably, you wouldn't call them creative in terms of, their output. But actually, I think, in a sense, in this age of AI, now is our time. I think, for the most creative people out there, we have the opportunity to actually shine, especially given how ubiquitous AI is. Just give an example of this. A couple of weeks back, I was in the office doing basically a messaging for somebody. And I was writing it, and the person turned to me and said, "Why are you not using ChatGPT?" And I said, "Why do I need to use ChatGPT?" And the person was just, not, I won't say horrified, but they were just amazed by this. And I think, again, if I look in organizations where I am, the usage of AI tools is ubiquitous. And I think, again, going back to the issue of creativity, the more creative we are as individuals, the more that we can shine, and also as well help our function to shine as well.
Yeah, so yeah, common sense is not very common. We started, but you haven't answered whether creativity is more universal or more localized. I don't think you answered that.
I think, look, we all have this universal condition of humanity. We all have same emotions, but at the same time, we have different contexts.
Yeah.
So, you may have, a feeling which is the same from region to region, but again, how you express it, how you say it, is going to be different. You go from, say, Holland. I've had Dutch colleagues, I love them to bits, but yeah, when they say something, the whole room turns red. And then you'll go to somewhere like the Gulf, say Saudi, where so much of the context is unsaid. And you've got to read between the lines, you've got to see how people are saying something, how they're behaving. So, creativity, emotional aspect is universal, but how we show it isn't.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. The emotions are universal, but whether you bold, underline, italicize it, or you leave it unsaid is what changes. Great, I'll come to you, Shruti. You have lived in Singapore, you have roots in India, and now you called Switzerland home, yeah. Traditionally, we've seen that innovation has always flowed from the west to the east, at least in my growing up years. And now we are witnessing reverse innovation, where trends start in developing markets and then they diffuse globally, from K-pop, K-dramas, Nollywood, to the Latin American telenovelas. I can go on and on. But in your experience in being this global citizen of the world, but still very much rooted in India, how do you see this trend and India's impact specifically on global creativity?
First of all, I want to start by saying it is wonderful to be back in India. This is where I started my career 20 years ago. I've always been in healthcare, and I think that there is no better industry to expand on, the focus on innovation and reverse innovation, as you put it. There are a couple of things that stand out for me, especially when it comes from a healthcare communications perspective, but I would say generally in communications is I like to believe creativity is about intelligence having fun. And I would also say, taking it one step further, that innovation is the hotbed for creativity. If we think of this in the context of India, and for people that have come from outside India, we have, and you will hear this constantly said, jugaad, which is, I guess a literal translation is get it done. It's a very intrinsic Indian philosophy to get things done, and jugaad is also about low cost, high impact. There are many examples in our industry where you look at innovation and what it means. COVID was a great example, especially in healthcare, where because of how much information and misinformation was out there in the midst of the pandemic, that many companies, including ours, started around-the-clock newsrooms because it wasn't enough and it was hard to keep the information flow going, but trusted information. And then we also took it one step further to say, Roche can't be the only company that uses around-the-clock news model, and therefore we decided that we would create a platform where journalists could directly interact with experts, not necessarily those affiliated with our company, in order to get information. And this is just, I would say, one small example of innovation. But another one that comes to mind is, if you guys are all Netflix watchers, which I am, there is a really amazing movie called The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind.
Yeah.
And it is, as you can see, it's about someone that lives in the middle of sub-Saharan Africa and uses innovation to address a problem. And that really, at the end of it, is how do you use a design thinking approach rooted in communications in order to deliver what it is that you're trying to achieve for your stakeholders. And I would say that that really is, in a nutshell, what I see around the world.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing those examples from your company and, from the larger world. Nike's What Will People Say? You know, you're half Arab, you stayed in UAE, and now you're coming from Riyadh this morning. Nike's What Will They Say About You had women athletes, runners, boxers, fencers, everyone, breaking stereotypes while acknowledging the cultural boundaries. And Closer Home, Ariel's Share the Load campaign has taken, you know, the theme is universal of gender equality, but it's placed it in an Indian family dynamic and spoken about very, very gendered shows, etc., and tried to break that stereotype. Alex, please quote some examples of some global communication campaigns and some localized campaigns which you think have worked and which haven't.
So I'll go back to the FMCG piece again, and particularly P&G. So there were two global campaigns which I love. So one is Like a Girl, because again, it touched on something which is globally lived through by girls and women everywhere. You know, that doesn't shift from market to market. And the other one was with Thank You Mum, which they did for the Olympics. And again, a really, really powerful idea. Again, universal, everybody understands it. And it just cut through. And I know they're both marketing campaigns, but they're based on insights. And I believe as PR people, we are very good at capturing, or we can be very good at capturing insights. Now, in terms of a local idea, something which my boss at P&G did, and it took me a while actually to understand, you know, the sort of the reasoning behind it, or the tradition behind it, is touch the pickle over here in India.
Yeah.
For anybody who's not from India in the audience, you know, ask one of your or neighbors, you know, what Touch the Pickle is about. But again, really, really very well thought through campaign, really insightful. And obviously, Touch the Pickle is not going to work anywhere else outside of India.
Yeah.
You know, if you try that in the Gulf, people are going to look at you really strange and say, what are you basically talking about?
Yeah, that's the other thing about that. Creativity also has to be contextual. What works in one market and is rooted in that ethos might fall flat or even offend in other markets. That's true. And while you did mention, Alex, that these are largely marketing campaigns based on communication insights, but maybe I'll bring in Shruti here to speak about some more PR and comms-based campaigns, which were not only marketing campaigns.
Yeah, thank you for that, and it's an excellent question, because oftentimes we also mistakenly assume that the most amazing creative campaigns are marketing-led, but I will say in recent times I've come across Lifebuoy's Diagnosticker out of Indonesia, which is a very PR, media, editorial-centric campaign. And in a nutshell, what it is on a Lifebuoy pack, they have a printable thermometer. And this is something that they piloted in West Java, because a lot of children under the age of 5 die from diseases that, if caught early, not only will allow them to survive, but thrive. And so what Lifebuoy did was an editorial-first approach. They partnered with actually one of the agencies that you see their logo up there. And I think that it is a brilliant campaign, because the insight that they found was that in Indonesia, a lot of mums go overseas to work either as nurses, domestic helpers, and things of that nature. And so the children are left in the care of the community or very elderly relatives. And so you can imagine, oftentimes if a child is unwell, he or she cannot seek medical help that they need. And then with Lifebuoy, you can scan the QR code and for free get teleconsulting with the doctor. And I think that something like this could have been spun in many ways, but if you look at all of the amazing coverage that they've got and the fact that it connected a brand, so who is the brand, what it controls, with purpose and reputation, which I know a lot of panels spoke about today, which is not what you control, and then use the campaign, which is sort of the bridge between brand and reputation, and I think that it was brilliantly done.
Thank you. So far, we've discussed the points of distinction here, but now we're going to talk about something which is a common pain: north, west, east, south, what have you, and everything in between feels the pain alike, and that is the communications budget. What is the heightened importance of creativity in corporate environments? where the comms budget continues to shrink. And Alex is grinning ear to ear. We'll start with you, Alex, because I want to end with Shruti before we go to the audience.
Yeah, we want to do more with less. That's the usual refrain. And I know how much pain that causes to our agency friends. I used to be on the agency side, and yeah, we've actually got to be able to pay the bills and everything else. But you know, it is the big challenge is, you know, where do you find the money? Where do you find the resources? We want to do more. We want to reach out. There's more noise. There's more channels as well to engage on. And I think, you know, one of the elements that we've got to do better is obviously advocate for what we do. That's a given. You know, go to the C-level and say, look, you know, give us this and we will give you that. But also as well, work more hand in hand with our marketing friends as well. We know they have, you know, bigger budgets. That's a given. But we can do a lot in terms of amplifying their work. We can make sure that it's seen, that people engage as well, that it's not just simply them shouting. We actually have a dialogue with the audiences that we care about. So we've got to get creative in terms of where we can find the money and then how we spend it.
So join forces with your marketing fellas and then do collective bargaining for the budgets, right? All right, Shruti, what about you?
I would say that one of the challenges that I found when I was in my Asia Pacific role as head of communications and public affairs, and now when I am in a global role, is I thought moving from a region into a global role would be that I would have a bigger budget, and relatively it is bigger, but it is not big enough for the mandate that communications tends to have. And the reason I think that this is the case, and it's not about my company, I think this is a rule of the thumb across industries, is we don't do a very good job in speaking the language of the business. Now hear me out. I'm not trying to say that comms doesn't have a seat at the table and that we are not advising CEOs. We absolutely are. But there is just something marketing does that is inherently better, and it is that they show metrics that are relevant to the business. And what I mean by that is, yes, front page coverage in one of the top tier media is great. Social media engagement is great, but we can't take it further to say how did that translate into action and conversion. And that is really what the CEO or the C-suite cares about. And unless we can get better at this, we will always find that we are a little bit lagging behind in terms of budget. And I would like, Alex, honestly, to be in a situation where we don't have to do more with less. We should do more with more. And so I feel like it's kind of one of these, you know, situations. It's like chicken and egg. What comes before what? And I think the time has come for all of us to really take communications into the next frontier. And you know, I really appreciated what Jim said about the 5 economies. And I would say, in fact, that there is a 6th economy, which is the brand economy. Because if every brand in every industry sounds the same, seems the same, and has kind of the similar values, then what really is the differentiator? And unless we are able to show that in very tangible business impact terms, we may find it hard to sell the value of comms. But I am a big believer that this is the era for communications.
So make knowing your business, embrace P&Ls. Not only should we be business literate, but also be seen as being heard as being business literate. That's what we have from here. We are left with about 7.5 minutes. And with a lot of you pouring into your phones, which is either looking at the time or taking copious notes, I think we'll toss over to this audience for whatever questions you have. Please raise your hands and ensure that you have a question, right? Not a commentary. Yes, let's go to Sujit.
Hi, excellent panel. I have a very fundamental question when it comes to our own country branding, and you alluded to Jugaad, which is something which is, you know, chalta hai and just do it. Is it really good for us to position as communicators to the global world that we are known for Jugaad, rather than being known for really great innovations in, the world where we are driving it? I mean, you know. So my question is Jugaad the right word? Are we really proud of it?
I think Jugaad is part of Brand India, and I would perhaps rephrase it to say, to me, Jugaad is design thinking done India style. So what that means is that you identify a problem, you pilot it, you prototype it, and then you create impact. And I will say, having just come to India over the weekend, that around the city I see a lot of Blinkit motorcycle delivery guys. And I would say that the Dabbawala system that has been here for generations and decades was perhaps a prototype for what we have with Blinkit today. So I would not say that it is jugaad for jugaad's sake, but it is something that has allowed us to deliver more value for less. And it continues to be, I think, a pain point that all of us in communications and marketing have, especially those with global, regional, multi-country mandates, is that you are constantly being asked to deliver more with less. And so I would say that for me, it's more a spin like that, but I completely see where you're coming from, which is it shouldn't just be jugaad for jugaad's sake.
I just want to add something as well into that. I always tell my team something very, very simple. Guys, get stuff done. What are you producing? They often, they obsess about wording. And again, I tell them, look, if I'm a consumer, if I'm out there, I will read something for 5 seconds, and that's it. I'm going to glimpse and it's gone. So don't obsess about perfection, but get the basics done, and that frees up your time to think about the bigger picture, the campaigns that we could be working on. And I think, again, part of the challenge we have today is that we are so busy, we actually don't have any time to think creatively. And I think that's part of the problem that we face. So, look at how you work more effectively, use tools if you want, of course, but we need free time, we need headspace to get creative and come up with big ideas. Otherwise, we miss that opportunity to really make a difference.
Yeah. Arun?
No, we've heard so much. So first of all, this is a great discussion. Thank you so much. We've heard so much about how corporates are increasingly cautious about what they can say publicly. There's a lot of backlash in terms of certain issues they might take on. Many of us indeed may live in countries where freedom of speech is heavily controlled. And I'm wondering, do you see these forces, this kind of pressure on freedom of expression, do you see these forces reshaping brand creativity in any way?
That's a hard one, but I will take a stab at this. I think one of the fundamental problems we have, and I can say this because I've been in-house long enough now, is we're often told to be bold when conditions are normal. And actually, the real time for boldness is when things are not going to plan. And it is a little bit like having to run this race really fast at speed with your hands tied behind your back. And so I do feel like we need to get better at this, but we always, especially in healthcare, we look to see what competitors are doing before we will feel courageous enough to take a leap of faith. And I think that there is no real answer to this, especially when there is like a political lens to it. But I would say that there is another side to this, especially when we talk about brand creativity and culture, is oftentimes it's also so sensitive within the cultural context. And I can use an example because I see so many women sitting in this room, is when it comes to something as simple as cervical cancer screening, India has the second highest burden of cervical cancer deaths in the world. And you will not imagine how many women will still not go to get tested for cervical cancer because it's an intimate exam. And this again goes to speak to the fact that a lot of brands will spend time doing health education and awareness, but they will fall short of this boldness and the willingness to take a stand to say, this is why you need to do it, because it feels like, oh, it's going against what is the cultural context. And so I feel like it's a double-edged sword, but I also think we can do better, and I wonder what your thoughts are.
I just feel like he's throwing the grenade into the room, as usual, Aaron style. Look, I had a long chat about the issue of risk with a friend in comms in Saudi, and he made a very good point, which is nobody ever got fired for not making a decision, but at the same time, you're not going to produce anything which is going to cut through. You're not going to produce anything which people remember. And I wish we would take more risks and we would go out and be braver. And, to give them their due, the FMCGs have done that for a long time. I think it's a very strange period that we're in right now, especially in places like the US, where you see organizations, corporations pivot almost 180 degrees in terms of certain issues. But at the same time, the public, they're not stupid. They're going to see this, they're going to notice, and, your reputation is going to take a knock for it. So, be true to yourself. It's a simple, adage, but I just wish we would be risk takers more of the time.
We're
Why
going to
not?
run out of time, so we're going to quickly go to Deepti. We just have about 30 seconds. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Great session. Just wanted to talk about, you talked about repairing with our marketing colleagues. What do you think of the idea that when we are struggling with measurement, we really become part of the purchase funnel? So will we only live with awareness? Can we really move down? Is that an opportunity we should take to cement our seat on the table?
I'm happy to go on this. So with P&G, one of my favorite jobs is working with marketing on what we call the multi-brand consumer initiatives. So we'd go in store, we'd go and work on a purpose-based campaign, like with UNICEF in terms of maternal neonatal tetanus. And because we would be part of a project which basically was to sell more, we could then show our worth more. And then, we would do more MBCIs, we'd get given more money, and it was, it's a virtuous circle, which is fantastic. And marketing loved us as well, because we were helping them sell more. So, again, if we can partner with marketing to show what we're doing in terms of lead generation, why not? Let's do it.
I think we can have the rest of the discussion over lunch. So I'm going to end with what Shruti said, that creativity is innovation, having fun. But we also know that creativity travels best when it's rooted in cultural empathy. Thank you, Shruti. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, audience.